I was in a school with the only English kid in an Irish school, getting IRA written on my school books, getting shit thrown at me, people waiting outside school, and I felt like, this is nuts. I had to fight, and then if I would have managed to avoid fights, my brother would get in fights, and then I'd have to fight people that he was getting beaten up by. So it was constant fights, and I never wanted them. But it's like, it makes me laugh when Richard Pryor, even the comedy he does, he says if you're black and you go out to Africa, you don't hear the word nigger because everyone's black. And he said, and you don't see that, and you stop thinking in those terms because it's not pushed into your brain every day from outside. He says, and it's funny to see white people going down the street looking for each other. He said that the tables are turned, and
I was talking about this yesterday. Yeah,
it just depends how comfortable or uncomfortable you are with yourself. You know what I mean? I saw something on the internet the other day where somebody said projecting, being aggressive is just a coward's way of projecting confidence. You know what I mean? In the wrong situation, it's like you're projecting things. I see it all the time because I've worked in sales, and when you cold call somebody, some people don't trust themselves to be at ease, have a conversation, and say no thanks. They think that they're going to that you're going to flip their mind or mess with them, so they just have to scream at you the minute you meet them to get away. And it's like, hey, you know what? If you're confident in yourself, you'd sit there and go, no thanks, And that's but it's a lot of fear. It's all fear playing out, and we live in a society today where fear is constantly being projected onto us because it stimulates reaction. And that reaction might be to buy something, it might be to vote for somebody, but fear is, there's a thing in sales about people respond to two different things. They respond to either hope or fear. Some people who are proactive, optimistic, if you show them something and say, hey, if you buy this thing or start working on this thing and you get it finished, it's going to be great. Whereas other people say, hey, I'm going to buy or make this thing for you because if you don't pay me to do it, the thing's going to happen. And a lot more people respond. The sad fact is a lot more people, DNA, reptilian, whatever you want to call it, we respond to the fight rather than the actual the move forward.
I had this, I was saying yesterday, I had this epiphany 6 months ago that my addiction to newspapers had been poisoning my happiness. Because I started to look for all the bad things in the world and hope that they'd appear in all the news that I just did. Yeah. And then I realised that as a human being, I'm just an animal that only 100 years ago I would not have even known about Syria. It was just what happens in my local neighbourhood. So I was actually carrying negative thoughts into the chicken shop around the corner here, thinking the world is stuffed, everything's going bad, no one's making money, and passing that on to my local area. So people were looking at me like, man, this guy's just a pain in the butt. He's just annoying. And then it went, no more. So I canned all news and TV and concentrated on making the people in my neighbourhood happy with me. Yeah. And because that's all it's supposed to be. That's nothing else.
Yeah, people are attracted to that.
And
it's rare.
They'll turn around their opinion of me. But not only that, and then I thought, okay, they were going to build a mosque in Currumbin, and I thought, well, I actually don't ever see overly Islamic people in Currumbin. Yeah. So until obviously the media has got me screwed to thinking that's to being on one side of the coin. Yeah. And if, but I've worked out. Don't be one of those guys. Wait till it happens and be upset. If I am upset, truly upset. Yeah.
Man, that's the
naturally, because I'm only supposed to see what I can see.
I'm having the same discussion with my wife at the moment. She's thinking about this mosque a lot because it's in the news a lot, and she's saying, why are they building a mosque here if there aren't any Islamic people here? And I'm saying, I've got bills to pay. I've got targets to meet. I've got 150 things to do. I don't need to actually have this in my mind at the moment, whether I agree with it or not. I just don't have the time for it, and I'm not going to worry about it. Okay, there's a lot of people active and voracious about it and going on about it. Let them carry on with it. It's just not something I just don't have that. And a lot of people say, well, you're wrong, you need to have that, you know. And I just say, look, you know, okay, there's enough passionate people out there about that. I've got other things I really need to do right now. I'm at a point in my life where I'm changing careers, changing the people I work for, just about to move house. I'm doing 101 things now. I'm not going to have that occupy my mind. And that's the technique of projecting these stories onto us. As I said, forget what the story is, but the projection of a thing onto masses of people is actually a form of social control.
Yeah.
Because it stops people being energetic, and it stops people being optimistic or entrepreneurial, you know, because they're all talking about the austerity measures. Like, so if you look at a completely different subject, but austerity, I read somewhere, austerity is working perfectly, because austerity is actually being designed by the people right at the top of society to discourage everybody from doing anything, so they can just take it back off us.
What is austerity?
Austerity is basically cutbacks across the board, downsizing across the board from above, and the media constantly projecting it. What austerity is to us is that people, you know, work in government, hospitals, service industries that are paid for by our tax, postal offices, pieces of land, even like dams, aquifers, train lines, everything being sold off in the name of austerity to corporations that can pick it off. The stuff that was held in the public trust is no longer belong to us, and we're creating what you call a toll booth economy, whereby for you to drive through certain areas it costs money, as what sort of a toll booth is, but for you to actually drink water costs money, a lot more than it does, because they start off by saying that we're going to privatise this to clean it up, because the current system isn't working, where it was just paid for by your taxes. So what they do is they say this austerity is, well, they sell everything off, but they never lower taxes. You know, our taxes used to pay for, like, they used to subsidise the post office, they used to pay for the national health care, used to pay for rails, water, infrastructure. Suddenly all that infrastructure is being privatised, so it costs more, and you're not getting basically the money back in your pocket in the reduction of taxes. You know, it's a way of basically picking people up and making sure that you've just constantly got them by the ankles with the money falling out of their pockets. That's my take on austerity, and it works perfectly for those in power. You know, all these people that are in government that then go on to move into these private companies and get pensions from. But we're in an increasingly divided society where middle class are being shoved down to the poor, and even the rich are being attacked, although nobody wants to admit that. And it's the percentage of those who are doing well is getting smaller and smaller all the time. You know, it's like a monopoly board that we're going around, and every stop says pay $200.
Isn't it lucky that I'll be honest, isn't it lucky we have those jobs? Because I've often thought of just throwing my hands in the air and just going to work for the council. Like, it just looks like my neighbour works in a...
Isn't it funny that, just before you say that, isn't it funny how the tone of the conversation has changed? Just from talking about this overriding thing that's being pressed down on us. There we were talking about how it presses you down, and suddenly we start talking about it, and you just feel the level just move, the psychic energy just shift, because that's what it's designed to do.
Yeah,
it's designed to shift your psychic energy away from saying I'm a go-getter, I'm a hunter and a provider for my family.
Right.
Now it's suddenly you think I'm not in control. You know. My destiny is in my own hands, and that's the message that's constantly projected onto us. You know. Anyway, go ahead.
But well, thank God we got that though, because the way we're headed, like we were only talking about this morning, the way we're headed, where everything is on your iPhone, like a decibel reader for my band. I could have bought one on eBay in China. It would have arrived in a little plastic thing that someone made, and the little workings in there would have fed a family in China. Well, it's an app now on your phone. So there's a million apps, like we were talking, right?
Yeah.
Million apps. So all these industries are going to disappear, and more people are going to be looking around at these easy jobs that
downsizing.
If anything, there's but who is going to pay for it?
Well, what Doug Stanhope said before is we measure our economy based on how many jobs, how many employment, how many people have jobs and are employed. The quality of those jobs, as George Carlin, the comedian, once said, increasingly shittier hours, increasingly shittier conditions. Everything's getting harder and harder when you have these jobs, and what people are now looking at doing is actually downsizing their lives, right. taking a more of a minimalist view of what they need. They're actually selling the big house, selling the car, getting a smaller house, and just getting a bike. That's the if you can downsize the debt and the money you go out every week, then basically you don't need to work as hard. And if you don't need to work as hard and you don't have much stuff, I don't think it's a bad thing that all these devices that we used to buy are now becoming apps. I don't think that's bad at all. I think that human progress, the utopia should be that nobody really has to work on stuff they don't enjoy doing, like pulling the bloody pulling shrimp apart. You know, there should be a machine to do that. So when you go to a restaurant, you just put it in a machine, boom, it's all done. That's how we should be advancing, but we keep having this yardstick for our progress, which is an ancient, outdated one, which is how many people are working 40 hours a week. You know, we have to admit we're kind of come to a time when 8 hours a day, 3 days a week is going to be enough divided by everybody, and then you downsize what you want.
Will we be bored? Are we? Did we get to this point in time because we can't help but work for all the daylight hours? We just can't help to try and be better than the next guy in our tribe and create something.
I think we'll only be bored because we're heading down a road where we've lost all of our skills. What you talked about this morning, building a raft out of bits of wood and weed, you know? We'd rather sit in an office for 80 hours over 2 weeks and then buy a stand-up paddleboard or a little plastic inflatable raft that's made of essentially oil and then throw it in the bin as soon as it gets a puncture, rather than actually doing something that goes back thousands of years, which is in our DNA, through evolution. We've been cut off from all that. Russell Brand, in his book Revolution, talks about how we've been annexed, we've been cut away from nature. He said he went training on a weekend with a bunch of commandos. He said they were running and hopping like ballerinas over walls, tumbling through hedges and stuff like that, and moving across country, rugged country land quickly. And he was stuffed after 5 minutes of trying to do this, and he realised that he was this waddling little helpless penguin of a man compared to these guys who were out there doing it. The reason that everybody needs to go to work is because they've forgotten our true nature. And the reason, and going back to that again, it's becoming the central theme of what we're talking about. These guys on the train, these are people disconnected from their true selves. They only feel safe in a big number, in a big tribe of people hiding behind guys at the front, chanting at somebody different. They haven't got the internal fortitude, strength of character for one of them to go, look, God, this is really shit what we're doing here. Nobody wanted to stand out and say that. They just kept it up. But the thing is that we all want to belong because we're all incapable of standing alone. And that's, you look at how we're brought up. You're born, you're vaccinated way beyond anything necessary, so your immune system doesn't get anywhere. You're dumped in a school, again, kicking and screaming, you don't want to be there. It seems like that you're in prison the first time you go to school because it's there forever. All you're being taught in school is how to become a little consumer within a system, you know. All these organisations that we go through aren't about self-empowerment, self-improvement. You're not actually there to look at that. And as Conor McGregor said in his interview, when you leave school, you're not allowed to pursue any dreams. You get a trade, or you go to college, or you do whatever, but you're expected to just jump on the treadmill.
Isn't it funny how you're... And it depends on the school. I'm a big believer in peers, the people you're around. But I had to learn the hard way because the school that I went to was just a normal kids' school, a normal public school. And they were good kids, but when it turned to high school, it seemed there were a lot of kids without from broken sort of homes, and I sided with a lot of these kids, and because they were really exciting. And once we all started drinking at 15, and it definitely shaped my life, is what I'm trying to say. Like it's funny how you're just thrown into school because everyone else does it, but you're being put into the hands by your peers on just how you may spend the years from 18 to 30 until you wake up to your own behaviour. So if you just luck into a good, money doesn't mean anything, but just like my primary school.